Happy Monday, friends.
Happy Monday.
Good to see y'all back here on the gravel. Pretty relaxing week, I can't lie. After the big storm we had last week with everything going on with me and Raven, it's nice to kind of sit back and relax this week. Nice Spanish GP weekend.
Feels so nice.
But yeah, there's still a lot to talk about this week, though. Some stuff we missed last week, some new stuff to go over. So I'm excited to talk about it. But
Likewise.
starting off this week, got a bit of drama for the French engine suppliers. We were seeing a lot about this. Raven and I were bickering about it over the week. According to Autosport, Alpine is in talks with rivals about becoming an F1 engine customer from other teams after leaving the Renault unit behind.
So after all the things we talked about with, 6 engine suppliers coming in, everything going to be nice. No, everything's not going to be nice. They don't like that engine, and I don't blame them. I mean, that car is so unreliable, dude.
Well, it's just funny to think that they have designed such a poor car. Well, actually, it showed pretty well this week, but they designed such a poor car. So to see that they are going so far off the deep end as to think about becoming an engine customer after being a works team for so long is a very crazy thought to think about. First of all, I have no idea who they would take supply from, but also it really impacts the brand a lot in the sense of, why would you want to support a team that just is making an absolute fool out of themselves? I don't understand. I don't think it's going to happen either. Don't get me wrong. They're going to slowly turn it around. We saw Flavio Briatore in the garage this weekend, so he's very much back as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of comes down to the idea of just reliability for them, and that's been a thing that they've kind of struggled with all this year.
And performance.
At that too. But one thing I saw was that they were trying
and
to talk
Esteban
with...
Ocon. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
One thing I saw was that they were trying to get Red Bull Ford engines. And I was like, oh, I don't think that's going to happen because...
Hey, but after all of the years that Renault supplied Red Bull in the mid-2010s, I think maybe Red Bull could pay them back with arguably the best power unit on the grid.
Maybe. I don't think that's a bad thing, but...
I don't think it is either, but...
I don't think it's going to happen, too, so...
I don't know. I feel like it's a big commitment to also move from being a supplier to the supplyee. So
I think also the idea of selling the team kind of comes up as a result of this because
if you're gonna become a customer, why not just sell the team at this point?
Especially to Hyundai, especially since they were wanting to be their own engine supplier, they're not going to be a customer team. Or you can try to go with an Audi engine. I don't know. Just gonna cut to
Who
you
knows?
drinking coffee.
Let the Andretti's come in and take over the team. I think it's over for Alpine, bro. Fans are they're jumping off the boat.
Yeah, and I don't blame them, dude. There's no boat really there to be on. I'm sorry, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
This week, Charles Leclerc carried the Olympic torch through his home country of Monaco as it continues throughout the other French countries to the Olympics in Paris.
I'll also be honest. I have no idea how Olympic torch bearing works, how the torch actually goes throughout all these countries.
So,
or what the historic
idea,
reference is.
I know in Atlanta, it went
Mm-hmm.
through the city, it went through Athens, it went through some of the Savannah. It went through a tour of the state. And I believe it does the same thing with countries, especially if it's someone famous from this country, they will especially take it. I remember, I feel like some Olympic runners. I remember there was the final one for one of them was a professional archer who they let stand 100 yards away and then take a flaming arrow and shoot it into the torch to signify the Olympics have begun.
That is
and it's
really
one of the
cool.
greatest clips I've ever seen in sports.
Yeah.
Just as a moment of just if he misses,
okay. He's not going to miss. Come on.
He's not going to miss, dude. Those guys don't miss.
But yeah, for Leclerc, I think it's a huge thing from him. I think he is arguably the most well-regarded Monegasque athlete on the planet right now. So I don't think it should have been given to anybody else in the country. So I'm very happy for him. His presence on the spectrum of pop culture and stuff is really
going
up. His stock is increasing.
I mean, he's
It's
also.
nice.
I feel like he's modeling more. Like you see him more like watch ads and.
That's nice for all of us. Okay, that sounded really fruity. My bad.
It is Pride Month.
That it is.
Happy Pride, everyone here in Chicago. Biggest Pride ever. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Trains were backed up. I didn't like that, but that's neither here nor there. We deal with it. But
Yeah, I was taking care of my buddy's cat this weekend.
oh, dude, that area must have been
Going
busy.
through the Boys Town area yesterday in that heat, just seeing everybody with their shirts off and going crazy.
Really got you thinking.
No, it did not get me thinking. It was very wild to see the turnout for that.
Well, yeah, it was awesome. But going back to racing, which we're here for.
Yes.
Some other news that came out this week was that most teams have opted to do preseason testing next year at Bahrain instead of Barcelona. I wanted to make sure I didn't swip them.
Yeah. Because I think the plan was to go back to Barcelona at some point in the near future. But I think personally, I think Bahrain is a way better track to test at.
I feel like there's more of everything.
Well, you have super high speed corners. You have very low speed, high braking zones. The DEG on that track tends to be very high. I know it is at Catalunya as well, but the Catalunya circuit has always been set up to be kind of a bore fest. There's not really many hard braking zones on that track except turn 1 and like maybe turn 10. But even with how they restructured that corner a couple of years ago, that's more of a low to medium speed corner now. It used to be a very hard braking zone. So it kind of took the variability out for those races because they had so much on-time, on-track testing at that venue. And to now transition to Bahrain over the past few years, I think it's been really nice for the sport because we're still kind of learning that circuit. And I think it's one that has more longevity in the sense of
Being in the grid longer.
not being in the, obviously we're going to Madrid in 2026, but longevity in the sense that it's not as cut and dry as Barcelona is. There's a lot more variability and, strategy that can happen at that race specifically. I feel like it's one of my favorite tracks. Most races there are always phenomenal. Like even without the invention of a safety car or a red flag or something like that, it just produces really good racing that doesn't really get ruined by testing, like at a circuit like Barcelona does. And that's my 2 cents on that one.
That was a great 2 cents. I'd pay that 2 cents. After giving our
Oh my goodness! I see that.
Yeah, I wrote the next thing as literally saying after giving our 2 cents on the amounts of sprints last season, which God, we are just on the same wavelength. I guess.
That's actually incredible.
I'll put up a flag right here for those if you want to hear us rant about the sprints and our sense on that. Just overall, we think it's a perfect amount just because any more gets into the issue of, increasing the budget cap because these cars need more parts and it's more wear and tear on the drivers and teams in a short period of time. So
yeah, you'd also have to increase the allotment for like every single component of the car as well.
Especially engine.
Yeah, literally everything.
You would need 2 more engines, like at least. But it's.
I mean, at 6 sprints, you're doing 2 more full race distances a year.
Yeah.
So
I don't like it.
That's near the life of one engine already. I think those are set at like 4 currently. So yeah, you'd have to add another engine to the regulations in allotment.
It just doesn't make sense. And even though Domicelli is looking to add more sprints, and as he says that the statistics show that there's interest in it, he also compared to F1 having 24 races not being excessive enough, comparing it to football and basketball where that are played every other day, with F1 fans counting down the days until the next race, which kind of in essence is what you want. Like you said that
I was going
off
to say,
air.
it also builds hype. And I'm going to talk about it with Le Mans later, which is something I forgot to cover last week. But there's like F1 is a spectacle. I would honestly be kind of pissed if these races were happening every single weekend the entire year. I think it would take some of the special nature out. It's how I feel about Major League Baseball, in the sense that there's, I think, 162 games a year. I could miss 5 games and the standings won't change at all. Like, I don't know. They just don't, those games don't feel as special to me since they're happening literally every single day.
I understand that, but
And I know that's somebody who's not a fan of baseball.
yeah, as a fan of baseball, I have a completely different take.
That's
But we're
fair.
not a baseball podcast, so I'll save that. My take on this is like the issue of money obviously becomes aware, but then the issue of money on the customer side of things, as in like the fans, they want more for what they're paying for, especially with the increase of prices, and we're going to get into that later. But
Yeah.
like, if that's the case, then add F2, F3, FIA events, like F1 events, F1 Academy events. Or just do the goofy things that you did in Canada, like the RAF race. Like, people would go to that if that's included in the weekend. Hey, after qualifying, stick around for another hour and you can see this goofy thing happen. And I genuinely think people would enjoy that. It would show a lot more personality. It would show a lot more overall just care and, like, you know, camaraderie that we don't really see that these drivers and teams actually have for each other. I mean, once we get to the final point today, we'll show like how mad Fred was about the Mercedes situation that's happening. I don't really understand why they want to bring 24. I mean, I'm not going to say 24 sprint races, but let's say they double it to 12.
12. That's a lot.
It's so many. And it's like you're giving teams now 4 days to travel everything to a new place, maybe 1,200 miles, 12,000 miles across the globe.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. It's not fair.
I don't know how I feel about it. I don't want any more sprints. We already said this. I said 6 is fine. Don't do anything more. And if you're going to, even if you are going to do more, do them at tracks where they'll actually be entertaining. I don't want to see a sprint race at like Zandvoort or
Or do
something.
tracks that are close to other tracks.
Yeah. Like do,
Like, oh, we're in Barcelona. Hey, we're not racing at this stadium or this track anymore in 2
Yeah.
years. We're going to be at the street circuit in Madrid. Why not do the sprint here?
or just be like, you know, we're doing a triple header right now. Spain, Austria, Great Britain.
Mm-hmm.
Why not make Spain a sprint race, take an off week for Austria, and have Silverstone be a sprint race? Like, especially since they're all in such close proximity, you know?
But then the issue comes scheduling, because then that means you're pushing back. A, you're either cutting into your summer break, or B, you're pushing back winter break by 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that means we're finishing mid-December, which that's not feasible. Not feasible at all.
Yeah, I
or
agree.
the other way is you start earlier, but then you would now have to kind of flip where you are in the world, because not every track is going to be at the perfect.
There's a reason Canada races in June,
Yeah.
and not like the beginning of fall
Not
with all the rest of
May.
the North American calendar.
Yeah. It's just one big issue that leads one big issue to one big issue. It's not an easy fix, but this is where we see the minds of the FIA and F1 and Liberty Media really shine through if they're there.
Yes.
Oliver, please break down the Theo Porcher situation.
So Teo Porcher this past week this is a little IndyCar stuff, but it's Teo Porcher.
But it's all relevant in the fact
it is all
these
relevant.
guys might be here in 4 or 5 years.
Or 2.
Or 2, yeah.
I mean, Teo's former Formula 2 champion last season. But Teo Porcher was dropped from Arrow McLaren this past week. Not for lack of performance, anything like that. He was actually dropped in favor of Indy Next driver, Indy Next being the F1 equivalent of Formula 2, Nolan Siegel. Arrow McLaren had stated that, you know, Nolan Siegel is like such a hot prospect that we can't lose out on the opportunity to have him in the seat. So they just gave Teo Porcher the bump after 5 races at the team. And it sucks in the sense that post winning the Formula 2 championship last year, Porcher had the option to either go to IndyCar or Super Formula, and he turned down Super Formula to go to IndyCar instead. So to have that happen, just like the politics of IndyCar and all that kind of stuff, just take that massive blow on him. It really sucks because obviously he can't go to Super Formula now. The season's already started. So he's kind of just left in the dry. So I really have no idea what's next for him right now. It's going to probably be, working on his reserve role at stake, but that's pretty much it right now. It's honestly, it's not that hard to land an IndyCar drive mid-season. It happens all the time with like any team. So I wouldn't be surprised if Teo kind of finagled his way into another seat. But yeah, it was crazy. Like the seat was already in David Malukas' hands at the beginning of the season, and then they gave it to Teo, and now they're giving it to Siegel.
Well, first they gave it to Calum.
Oh yeah, Callum Ilott, I forgot.
For an open test.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're like, oh, Teo Porcher is available. Teo Porcher, let's get him. And then they were like,
please never say Teo Porcher again.
What is it?
It's Teo.
Teo? Okay. Teo Porcher. I'm sorry.
Oui. Le français.
I want to get up and punch you so bad, dude. I want to get up and punch you so bad.
After the podcast.
Anyways, going back to the American episode of this podcast, a statistic that stood out to me and that shocks me how bad Sauber team, not the drivers.
Oh, I saw this stat too.
But the team themselves, compared to the other teams this year and last year, okay? So in 2024, Sauber has spent more time in the pit stops this year so far through 9 races, not
even Spain this weekend,
not including Spain, than both Ferrari and Aston Martin in the entire 2023 season.
Riff it off. 24. Sauber has made 30 pit stops so far, not including the Spanish GP, for a total of 265.39 seconds stopped in the pit lane.
Ferrari
last year, 66 pit stops all year, 55 seconds less spent in the pit lane at 210.41 seconds. And you had Aston Martin as well, just a second under, not even, 0.4 of a second under, but still, 75 pit stops made, 264.98 seconds spent in the pits. They made 2.5 times as many pit stops last year as Sauber has so far and still spent less time in the pits.
You got to give Lance Stroll a lot of that credit, though.
For real. I mean,
because
I would love to see these
king
stats.
Of the pits.
But Valtteri Bottas, 2021 Mercedes pit stop at Monaco is making Sauber look like the king of pit stops right now.
It's been rough.
It's all relative, guys.
Let's get into Adrian Newey for a second. According to the Telegraph, Newey has already toured Aston Martin facilities and claimed that if he wanted to go to the English team, 30 million euros per season.
He wants 30 million.
He wants 30 million per season.
That is okay. You have to think about this. That is more than every single driver contract on the grid, bar Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. It's a lot of money.
He would be the third highest driver on the grid.
Yeah, you said third highest paid driver. What?
Technically, he can drive those cars.
That's fair.
He has his super formula.
But I mean, there's a reason, though. There's a reason he has the ability to say an outlandish statement like this and ask for that much money. His racing design pedigree has warranted this.
Absolutely. Not
30 million is crazy, though. But it's Daddy Stroll he's talking to, so he can make that happen.
Apparently, the team also requested the entire staff of the headquarters to leave the factory for the duration of the visit and try to keep the news from being leaked. But it still got leaked, though.
Yep, it got leaked right on the gravel.
So that was clever. I like what you did there.
Thank you.
Let's talk about F1 prices.
This is one of our big issues here is trying to, figure out going to a race when they're as expensive as they are.
Hey, man, when I am making not much money a year and, half that's going to rent.
Yeah.
It's hard to dip into any amount of money to go to one of these races. And it sucks because
especially
I really
want
to go.
States.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere, dude. And like in feasibility, the United States makes most sense because it's like, oh, it's a short drive, but hotels are outlandish unless you know someone out there.
Hey, I'm just saying, think about the fact that you could take a round trip flight to Budapest in Hungary, stay in a hostel, get a 3-day GA ticket, and come all the way back for less money than it takes to drive and go to the Austin GP.
Yeah, we tried to go to that one.
Like,
it's just not going to work out. So, unfortunate, but
yeah.
This week, a lot of people were complaining overall about ticket prices in F1 and the rise of ticket prices since Liberty Media has taken a hold of the company. Silverstone was the main highlight of the issue this week. And I think it's like, 4 years ago? I think it was like $388 per ticket, per person for general admission 3 days. So you could get 2 tickets for roughly $700 plus fees. And the price of 1 ticket now plus fees surpasses that. And that's just not really fair.
Well, it's like also like the dichotomy of them also wanting to add so many more races.
Yeah.
Like if you want to add all these races, drop the prices of tickets.
Throw MotoGP in there too, because
have it as a support series for the F1 weekend.
It feels like that's what they're gonna have to do, dude. Because there's no way like people can really look at this and be like, besides the experience and going to see these cars, I don't think it's feasible to take, even kids now. Like, that's my thing. Is like, how many kids used to go to races? How many kids you would see at TV or like I don't know. The one I always remember is the crying Kimmy kid.
Yeah.
From like 2016 or something, but I don't know.
Well, okay. My crazy stat when it comes to F1 ticket prices. So if I was to go to the USGP in Austin at general admission, how many times could I go to the 24-hour of Le Mans for the same price?
17.
10.
Okay.
But 10 times. I could go to the 24-hour of Le Mans for
That's
10
wild.
years in a row for the same price to go to the Austin GP once.
That's so wild, dude. I hate it. But Max responded to all these claims after a lot of the blame was being put on him, according to the F1 community and FIA, that low ticket sales weren't a result of him being dominant, since it's been some of the most exciting racing we have seen in a while. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I don't think it's Max's fault. I mean, hey, he just won his first race today in
Guys,
3
Max
weeks?
Verstappen is now a Grand Prix winner. He won his first race today. You heard it here first from Raven.
I hate you. I hate you. I hate you so much. He won his first one in like 4 weeks. You happy?
No, actually, he won last week in Canada.
Oh, I just totally blanked that. That was out the memory. There
It's
was
okay,
too much.
it's
There was
okay.
too much happening
It's
that
okay.
weekend. But he was quoted also saying, if a promoter can't fill all the seats, maybe they need to first look at themselves and see what they're doing wrong. In other places, they're managing to fill the stands quite easily, which is fair.
Very fair.
Montreal was packed. Japan was packed. Monaco's always packed, so we can't really count that. But I mean, Lewis even chimed in.
Spain looked packed today.
Yeah, Spain looked awesome. That was beautiful today. I love the weather looked nice, and the threat of rain being just slightly imminent was beautiful. But Lewis even talked about the prices, saying we have to watch them. It's hugely expensive and it's too high. The sport won't like that I'm saying this, but I'm thinking from the perspective of the fans and their families. And we all love Lewis Hamilton for that very reason, don't we, Oliver?
I do. You know what? I may not be Lewis Hamilton's biggest fan, but I can very much respect the guy.
The guy just knows. He's very humble, and
I agree.
it's very appreciative about a person. But Silverstone only showed a 2.5% increase in ticket prices compared to last year, but compared to 2021, it's something of like 70% or more. So
Yeah, it's
It's bad. And
Almost double.
this is what you get as an American company taking over your business, a sport where they don't respect any traditions. So, and capitalism. We love capitalism, but this is the first time Logan Sargent had the same car to his teammate in a while.
All year, baby.
He was
And what did he
still
do?
slower.
Nothing. I do love Logan Sargent. I can't lie.
We all love him.
We know
We
the
all
guy
love
has
him.
potential. This might just not be the series for him, but at least he was on an even playing field this week, which I was very happy about.
I love it. So, since the 2016 Spanish GP, excluding today,
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton has won 60 races, Max Verstappen has won 60 races, and the rest of the F1 grid combined has won 51 races.
Do you know who's won the most of those races? The most of those 51 races?
Ooh.
I do.
Oh, is it? No, it's not Seb, because that would be too late. Is it Seb?
You have to remember, Seb was challenging for the championship in 2017 and 2018. It was
Oh.
Sebastian Vettel at 14.
Nice. Okay. Let's go. Minor
Good
win
on you.
minor win for me. Today was also the 1,000th, 100th, and 11th race in F1 history. That's a milestone.
Which is crazy because I remember the 1,000 race, like race 1,000 at Mugello in 2020. Like literally feels like yesterday. And Ferrari had such a special livery for that race. They raced in this like nice maroon color that went off in a gradient back to like the
to the
Ferrari
white.
red.
Oh,
No,
the
back to the
red.
Ferrari red.
Ooh.
But because obviously Ferrari's been in the sport literally since race one, so it was also their 1,000th race. But maybe when we get to race 1250 or something, we'll have another one of those special liveries, something like that.
Hopefully.
But yeah, just to also think that, you know, 10% of, I've now seen like over 10% of all F1 races live is a crazy stat too. What?
That's just a wild statement to hear. Said.
It's a fact.
But dude, there's probably some people that have probably gotten like 400 under their belt.
Dude,
Realistically?
who was the lady that they were talking to on the grid at Canada 2 weeks ago?
Oh,
the bike
the-
racer.
Oh,
She
I know
was, like,
exactly. She was
so-
one of the first women motocross, like one of the higher motocross like, cross.
Yeah,
teching
and
or
then you had
something,
Martin. Yeah, you had Martin Brundle asking her, "Oh, is this your first time at the race?" I was at the first race. Like I was so funny.
It's just, yeah, like you said, so funny, bro. But do you want to take the V carb?
Yeah, VCAR brought a giant upgrade package with them to Spain, aiming to compete more with the Aston Martin. But yeah, Raven was talking about how he didn't really know it was true since one of the cars is apparently a B-spec car. But new underbody on it. They updated the fairing. You told me to explain.
What is a fairing?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. That is a part of the car I can't explain right now.
Let me figure it out.
I typically can. But thankfully, VCarb's upgrade seemed to do absolutely nothing this weekend. However, the Aston Martin found a way to look even worse this weekend. So they were competing on a very similar footing this weekend. So, you know, if you want to say that it worked, it worked. Maybe Aston Martin is just continuing to fall back. But yeah, I guess the upgrade worked, but it really didn't show given they both got knocked out in Q1 on Sunday, all that kind of stuff. But
A fairing in a Formula One car is a weight-controlled device that can be attached to the front and rear wheels of the car to improve airflow, but it's essentially calming the unsteady wake created by wheels.
thank God you explained that. I would have never been able to tell you what that was.
No, that was... It's apparently on rocket ships, too, so it's just some rocket science. But
A lot of rocket science
lot
goes into
of-
making an F1 car.
Dude, oh my God, I believe that. But Lewis and Alonso have reached an impressive milestone of 300 races competing against each other, which, do we think that would be beaten again?
I'm going to say, okay, Michael Schumacher always says that records are here to be broken.
Yes.
However, how many people do you think have even raced 300 GPs in F1? I believe it's like 5. It's Kimi Räikkönen, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso. There's a couple more, but under 10 drivers have even raced 300 times in F1. Michael Schumacher might be one of them as well. But yeah, I don't think it's getting beaten. That's one I can say I don't think is getting beaten.
You actually have 10 drivers.
Okay, 10. But that's still single or
Sergio. Oh, okay. 300. There's only 7.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Seb has exactly 300.
Okay.
Schumacher's 308. Jensen Button 309. Barrichello 326. Hamilton 341.
I didn't even think about Ruben.
Kimi 353. Fernando coming up on 389.
Fernando Alonso's going to get 400
He's going to get 400 races by the end of the year. That's crazy.
Fernando Alonso has raced in near 40% of every single F1 event.
He's started 386 times. So entries to start, but whatever.
Well, you could have an issue with like a great example of that is Logan Sargent entering the Australian GP this year, but having to withdraw because no car by the time the race starts.
Okay. Former F1 president Jean Todt?
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure. Mr. Name Man.
Mr. Name Man is crazy.
Believes that Mick Schumacher is better than half the drivers on the grid right now. And
oh my goodness. Thank God we got this guy out of the president's office.
That's a take.
Oval Office is not for you, man. That is a horrible take. That might be one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. Here. Okay, Mick Schumacher.
Does it need one of these?
Okay, he can be better than Logan Sargent. I'll say he's better than Lance Stroll. I might even be generous and chuck Kevin Magnussen in there.
Zhou?
I did not mean to say Kevin Magnussen. I meant to say Esteban Ocon. Yeah, you can throw Guan Yu Zhou in there as well.
So that's 4.
That's 4. That's it. Nope.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay, that's it apparently. Mercedes had a new floor on their car in Spain, but it was not labeled as an upgrade. So I don't know what the legality of that is. Or
it doesn't have to be. Okay, you can bring upgrades whenever you want. It's not like you have to be. We are bringing an upgrade this weekend. Let's sign the dotted lines.
Actually,
here.
So apparently there's a doc that they have to like fill out the new upgrades and what they do and submit that to the race.
Oh yeah.
So there technically is an announcement.
Yes, but
they didn't make a news post about it.
Yeah. To me, I guess I could understand why they say it's not an upgrade. It's more of a consistency thing, you know? They're continuing from where they left off last week. This is continuing the growth that they're on. They were very much challenging for the podium all weekend. Obviously, they made it on with Lewis Hamilton, but yeah, they're looking really good now, kind of out of nowhere.
Yes, Mercedes has kind of turned it around
Resurgence
in this last 2 weeks, which we can all be happy about. But saving the best for last, like always, the Mercedes anonymous email scandal. Wah, wah, wah. You don't really know much about this, from my understanding, correct?
I didn't hear nearly anything about this. Okay. No.
So I can break this down a little bit. So let's go with the pre-context first. So this week, someone in the Mercedes team came out and said that an anonymous email was sent to the police on behalf of a employee that team members were purposely compromising Lewis's car, his tire strategy, and his mental wellness, which is a wild claim, especially in today's age, like with all the mental health stuff.
I couldn't have expected something like that.
So
it's wild.
It's just really, really out of left field. And in response, Total Wolf took a very forward approach about these claims, reporting the email to the police and having them track all the metadata to attempt to find the person, which totally understandable in this case. This is not something you can be, throwing around there. False claims like this,
it's
where
literally
it's
like
so big. It is
slander.
defamation. It sadly is, but He also said that we know this is not coming from an employee of our team, and we have received an incredible number of these types of emails. That is disturbing, especially when someone talks about death and things like that in such an email. That is why I said that we have to investigate this fully and call the police. Online behavior like this must stop. Lewis came out and supported his team, claiming that it was all false. Even Fred Vasseur spoke up. The Ferrari team principal was quoted saying, "How could you imagine that a company of 1,500 people working day and night, pushing like hell to bring upgrades, that we would kill one of our cars or deliberately damage one of our cars? This is completely irrational. Nobody in the paddock could do something like this. We are fighting for the championship. Each weekend, we are trying to score 1 point more than the other one. How could you imagine that anyone would say, okay, Lewis, we don't want you to score points anymore with him?"
Yeah,
this is completely irrational and completely out of the scope of people who are doing my business. And it's all so understandable because it's a terrible situation to be in. Publicly, it's really, really, I mean, bro, like, you know how much hate, not hate per se, but like, just stress the Mercedes team has now with this, like, kind of like talk behind your back kind of feeling that I have to imagine being there. Like, how do you, like, they had an amazing result this weekend, so that really helps solidify that these claims aren't true.
I agree.
But then I feel like there's going to be people that are going to be like, okay, where was that, 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago.
I don't know. Like I said, we were gonna have to get to a point where Lewis would stop being favored and given information on next year's car. Obviously, since he's not going to be driving there next year.
Yeah, and that's a typical practice.
It is. But yeah, like stuff like this is definitely not what's happening. Like that's way too far. I didn't expect it to be like this bad because I held off from looking at this last night when we were going over stuff because I kind of wanted it to be fresh. That's just wild.
Yeah, and it's why it has kind of been shaking the news around. I don't want to say by storm because we always kind of get scandals like this, but it's just the scope of it, and especially with all of these high-ranking names and two of the best teams in F1 right now.
Yeah.
The driver that's switching between the two. It's not a great look. It's not a great look for the sport either. And now the issue becomes, can they find the person? We all hope they can, but
it's 2024. We can definitely find that dude.
Definitely. That is it for the general news, though. So we'll get into the race recap. Oliver, you take this practice.
Yeah, I didn't catch a ton of practice. Obviously, I got all the highlights and that kind of stuff, but plenty of teams were looking very strong over practice with Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, all trading the lead of the 3 practice sessions. You throw a Red Bull into the mix because Max Verstappen is always going to be there, and you have 4 teams that really have the ability to fight it out for pole position. And I was completely right on that, and we were soon treated to a fantastic qualifying session. But nothing like super crazy happened over practice. There were a few minor incidents of, drivers touching in practice. I'd say the most notable one was Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris. Lando was on like a hot lap and, Charles was trying to move out of the way. I think it was going into turn 6, 7. And he just didn't leave enough space. Lando and him touched a little bit. Of course, Lando flipped out. Charles also thought Lando was completely in the wrong, as every driver does in the heat of the moment. They think everybody else is incorrect. But what more surprised me is the fact that no penalties were given out to the drivers that had like these infringements throughout practice because, people got grid penalties for impeding during qualifying, as we will soon figure out. But yeah, it kind of shocked me that it didn't happen with the practice infringements. But going into qualifying, I don't know how much of it you actually got to catch, Raven. I sat there watching the whole thing, of course, but it was a crazy dichotomy in qualifying yesterday with the V-Carbs and Alpines seemingly trading places in performance, with Ricciardo and Tsunoda unable to even escape Q1. But I think kind of under the radar, Gasly and Ocon both seemed to brace Q3 with like relative ease, which really shocked me. And then, towards the front of the field, which was where we were all looking, it was looking like pole position number 40 was in set for Max. He set a time of 1:11.403, but an absolutely insane final lap from Lando Norris saw him pick Max by 0.02 of a second with a time of 1:11.383. And what was crazy was the fact that Sergio Perez on the final lap was actually giving Max a super big tow across the main straight. So that really puts into context how crazy Lando's final lap was, because I'm pretty sure he wasn't getting a tow from Oscar. Oscar was too busy botching every single lap that he had in Q3 to even set a time. But no shitting on Oscar. I love that man. It was just an unlucky qualifying session for him. But, it was multiple tenths of a second gained for Max Verstappen on the main straight via his teammate. It really seems like that is the only reason they gave Perez a contract. They're literally driving with one car. Perez is literally just there to help Max as much as he possibly can. But anyways, aside from that, it wasn't really like the big four shootout that I thought it would be, but there was larger gaps between the Red Bulls and the McLarens. Sergio was nowhere near Max. Oscar didn't even set a time. But on the other side of things, the Mercedes drivers were 0.02 apart in qualifying, and the Ferrari boys were not far behind, 0.05 apart in their qualifying times. All of them around 0.3 behind Max and Lando. But Perez finally made Q3 in the European Tour, setting a time good enough for 8th position. But of course, his European disaster fest continues with his grid penalty from last week, putting him out of a Q3 grid spot in P11. This guy can't catch a break. Sargent was also handed a 3-place grid penalty. I hinted towards that earlier for impeding Lance Stroll in Q1, but it didn't really matter as Logan's supreme consistency of starting on the back of the grid had him back there anyways. And like I said earlier, Piastri's Q3 also looked to be quite a shocker, with the Aussie not even setting a time, as track limits and riding out on the gravel struck him hard in the final portion. We also had our fair share of on the gravel comments this weekend from our lovely pundits in F1. But race-wise, we actually got a new TV here in the studio, so we had the race on.
It's not really a new TV.
Here. Well,
it's Tassos' TV from his room.
But it's
new to the studio.
It's new to the studio.
So is a lot of stuff you'll see, like the sign, this padding right
nice
here.
Sound foam.
We're getting some more stuff on the walls. We got the board.
Shaved. Okay.
Anyways.
But yeah, we were kind of finishing the race up when we got in here this morning. But to set the stage, Norris and Verstappen, they shared the first row, with Hamilton and Russell starting just behind in 3rd and 4th. And when I woke up this morning, I immediately turned the race on my phone. I woke up as close to the start time as I could so I could watch the first few laps, then get ready, then come here, then watch the end of the race. Alex Jakes, I'm sitting in my bed, manifested a 2011 Alonso-esque start, saying, he was like, we've seen as low as P4 take the lead into the first corner here before, and right as that happens, the lights go out. George Russell catches a perfect slipstream behind Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, and it literally mirrors the Alonso one so well. And he goes around the outside and swoops around the both of them to take the lead of the race. Now, of course, Max got back past him pretty quickly. Lando soon followed behind. And when I say soon, I mean 40 laps later. It was very tough for Lando to actually get past the Mercedes today. As we were talking about, they did look really good. But, after those opening scrambles, we all knew it was going to be a race of strategy, as Spain always is. It's not a super huge, track for on-track overtakes. Now, a lot of really good moments happened into turn one this race. There was a lot of good battling into the first corner. But yeah, Lando eventually did make his way past George Russell through a convincingly good tire strategy, I guess. It was very weird. He would extend most of his stints by up to 10 laps to have fresher tires to attack later on. So I mean, after the last pit stop, I think he was about 9 seconds behind Max Verstappen with 15-ish laps to go. And he ended up closing that all the way to 2 seconds by the end of the race. All he cared about was winning the race, which that's all we all want. But I think it was a decent conclusion of the race. It was nothing crazy. You had Perez stuck in the bottom 10 the entire race. I think he ended up finishing P8, P9, so he scrapped a couple points. It's been a minute since he's even scored a single point. Am I surprised? No. But on the contrary, Piastri did actually do pretty well to somewhat make up for his shocker of a Q3 yesterday. He made it all the way up to P7, so some good points from McLaren. And then you kind of had Williams and V-Carb nowhere for this race. And yeah, to see after that with how dominant Max looked the entire race, to have him only win by 2 seconds, I thought was very impressive, in the sense that Lando's alternate tire strategy actually did work. I mean, if there was like maybe 2 or 3 more laps, Lando probably would have been in the DRS and could challenge for the win. But it's always a little too late.
Yeah, it was a good race. I
was decent.
Slept through like 10 laps, but that's okay. We're here. We did it. We watched the end of the race. That's all that matters. But it was a fun weekend. There was a decent amount of other racing. We had some F1 Academy races this week. We had Dorian Pin win yesterday.
No, we had Abby Pulling win yesterday. We had Chloe Chambers.
New F1 winner. New F1 Academy winner. So
yeah,
round of applause for her.
Part of the Haas development program. I was very happy for her. Yeah, Haas finally winning something. And I will also spam fire through my F2 for this weekend. We are finally back in Formula 2. Qualifying for this race was an insanely close affair this weekend. I feel like it's always been, as of recent, super close quali gaps. But this was arguably the best qualifying session in F2 all season. Championship Paul Aaron took his maiden F2 pole position with a time of 1:24.766. But the shocking stat of quali, which brings us back to last week in F1 and, to this race as well, is that P1 and P3 were separated by 0.006 of a second, with Jack Crawford in P2 and Franco Colapinto in P3. Like, I don't even know how to conceptualize what 0.006 of a second actually is.
I believe it's like equivalent to like 2 feet. Like, genuinely, I think it's equivalent to like 2 feet.
I think it's equivalent to like maybe 5 inches.
Probably.
But yeah. Anyways.
Distance over time. Speed.
Thanks.
No problem.
But yeah, I mean, P1 to P5 was only a tenth apart, and then all the way down to P19 was only a gap of 0.8 of a second. Like, the field was so close this weekend in Formula 2. The sprint yesterday featured 10th place qualifier Kush Miney on pole position. That's just how the reverse grid works in F2. I've talked about it before. He had Victor Martins alongside of him. It was an extremely poor start for Miney, though, paired with a fantastic jump for Martins that saw Victor seize the lead immediately and really never look back, building up near a 5-second gap on the field by the flag for what is shockingly only his second F2 win. But the podium rounded out with Miney taking P2 and Juan Manuel Correa taking P3 on track. Unfortunately, he had it taken away post-race, promoting championship leader Aaron onto the podium after a great race. He started in P10, obviously, since he took pole position. But the battle for the final spot on the podium was kind of what made that race, with Gabriel Bortoleto initially holding the place, but poor tire management, just the car not feeling too good, forced him to overcompensate on defense. And it was kind of a lost cause at that point, eventually losing track position to Correa and Aaron. And time penalties really seem to be the big talking point of the race, with multiple drivers being penalized both during and after the race, with the most notable, unfortunately, being Juan Manuel Correa being stripped of his first F2 podium in 5 years for an off-track violation. And why that's so huge, I guess, is just because of his shocker crash that he had with Antoine Hubert in 2019 at Belgium, which we obviously, if you know anything about racing, you know what happened that weekend. But yeah, prayers to Antoine Hubert always. But it was very sucky to, all that work that he's had to fully reconstruct his leg and, come back, and he finally gets on a podium again and he gets it stripped away with a post-race time penalty. Like, he got to go through the whole podium celebration. But it was a clean affair. All entrants finished the race for the first time since the feature race the same time last year. So it was a calendar year before we had a full finishing order. But it's okay. With the feature race, we kind of got the sweet, sweet redemption of Correa. He actually found his way back onto the podium again with dams. So it was a nice, very nice end to that. But it was a race to forget for Paul Aaron. Obviously, he started on the pole position that he took yesterday. But it was a mix of slow pits, driver error. We saw him on the gravel a couple times. That saw him not even fall off the lead of the race, but fall off the podium entirely, finishing the race in P4. You had a massive crash with Dennis Hauger and Victor Martins, taking the both of them out in turn 2 on lap 1. It was an incident that actually collected like 4 or 5 cars, but only the 2 of them went out. But the feature race to me wasn't as exciting as the sprint race was. But yeah, I think it was still a genuinely great weekend for Formula 2. Paul Aaron extended his championship lead a little bit. Jack Crawford was the biggest gainer this weekend, going from 10th all the way up to 4th in the standings. But yeah, I'm super excited for the next race. F2 is, I care about it just as much as I care about F1. I think it's the pinnacle of the support series. It's beautiful.
I don't have as much for my, supporting racing this week. We have Poland starting on the 27th, and MotoGP starts on the 30th. So next week, I will have a lot to talk about. But this week, it is Oliver's time to take up some time on the mic, which is always a good thing.
Hey, I'm on the mic all the time. I'm on the gravel all the time, too, in the sim. I did want to pop it back over to WEC. Of course, we talked about the 24-hour of Le Mans last week, but I completely forgot to touch base on the fact that I forgot that WEC released their calendar for next year, and it was a complete carbon copy of this current year's calendar. I saw a lot of people were not really happy with the changes, including the fact that it's an 8-race championship, and others were saying that we are missing previously raced at venues. Silverstone's a huge one. We ditched Sebring for COTA this year, so a lot of people are a bit pissy about it. I know a lot of people want, more races on the calendar. But I think it's very important to step back and look at it objectively. I think what WEC is doing is a very methodical plan. It's important to not oversaturate the amount of racing we're getting with WEC. You have to think about this in the context of other sporting or motorsporting discretions. So, like, for example, F1's 24 races, they're about 90 minutes a race. There's 36 hours of on-track racing in a season, bar no safety cars, red flags, all that kind of stuff. In WEC, you have 8 rounds, but there is nearly double the amount of time on-track spent racing at 68 hours. Even if you take out the 24-hour of Le Mans, there is still 12 more hours of racing in only 7 rounds in WEC. I don't think a lot of people can conceptualize that. It's, building a foundation is important for a series that's really starting to see some serious growth. F1 started to see it in like 2019, 2020, at least over here. And WEC is just now starting to see it in these past like 2 or maybe 3 years. Like just a few years ago, you had a lot of entrants pulling out of the series. A lot of people weren't wanting to host races anymore. But, with the new hypercar class, all that kind of stuff, and then really trying to build this solid foundation, it's much easier for manufacturers to enter that series as well. It's why a lot of people aren't actually trying to join F1 right now. WEC has made it very easy for engine manufacturers, all that kind of stuff, to join the sport. You don't have this $200 million fee that F1 does to have to join the sport. I think in WEC it's $20 million. So you have this series attracting a bunch of new entrants, and they're going to try and build this fan base that they have because, F1, they're seeing more people. They immediately add more races. I think WEC really wants to solidify the foundation that they currently have, and, truly sees that the hype that they have is real and then start building on it. Do I think at some point we'll get to 10, maybe 12 races in WEC? Yes. But I think the way WEC is going about it is completely different than the way F1's going about it, but I think it is actually better than what F1 is doing. So that's my 2 cents. We're now at 6 cents on the day, but yeah, that's my 2 cents on the WEC calendar. But yeah, I mean they have good circuits on the calendar. There's nothing wrong with the calendar itself, but everybody's gonna find something to complain about. So that is my finito for WEC today.
Yeah. So that's going to wrap it up for us here today in the studio on the gravel. But we have 2 other shows on the network you can go check out. We have the interview series, which had Oliver on last week. I'm going to be interviewed today, so that's going to come out, I believe, today or tomorrow. And, this will be out tomorrow. Good Morning Hockey. We got 7 more shows, I believe. I think we're stopping July 2nd for a short summer break. So you can go check out that. We're going to get some fun guests this week. I know that for a fact. So come check that out. Subscribe, rate 5 stars wherever you listen. Oliver, you know the drill. Take us out. Quickly.
Oh, sorry. Subscribe. This side of my head. I think this is how I always do it. We'll see in post. Last week's video, this side of my head. I appreciate you guys popping out with us. Right around an hour here today. Kind of make it quick and easy for you guys. But I appreciate y'all coming out here and listening to us yap. It's always fun.
Thanks,
you guys. I appreciate you.
See you next week.